They stood outside like strangers begging at a kingdom they didn't build. 3 faces pressed against the glass of my headquarters, looking small, looking lost, looking exactly how I felt every single day growing up in their house. My father's hand was raised mid-knock. My sister's mouth hung open. My mother's eyes searched the building like she was trying to find a crack in the foundation. But there were no cracks. Not in my building. Not anymore. My name is Kelly Mercer. I'm 23 years old. And 48 hours ago, these 3 people handed me a bus ticket and told me to disappear. The security monitor showed everything in cold, perfect detail. Trent, my father, wore the same jacket he'd had for 15 years, the one with the coffee stain on the collar he never bothered to clean. Brielle, my older sister, kept checking her phone, probably reading the comments under my interview video for the 1,000th time. And Lorraine, my mother, stood between them like she always did, present but powerless, there but not really there. My assistant, Marcus, cleared his throat behind me. He'd worked for me for 8 months and still wasn't used to how quiet I got when something big was happening. "Ma'am, should I have security remove them from the property?" I didn't answer right away. I watched Trent knock again, harder this time. Entitled. Like he had a right to be here. Like he'd invested in this building with something other than cruelty. "Not yet," I said. 48 hours earlier, I'd walked across that graduation stage alone. For years of college. Double major in computer science and business. I'd finished a semester early, maintained a perfect GPA, and built a company worth $200 million in my spare time. But when I looked into the audience during the ceremony, searching for 3 faces that should have been easy to spot, I found only empty seats. They showed up afterward, though. Found me in the parking lot while I was putting my cap and gown in my car. Trent was grinning, that same grin he used to give me when he was about to say something that would hurt just enough to leave a mark, but not enough that anyone else would notice. "Kelly," he said, like my name tasted bad in his mouth. "We got you a graduation present." Brielle giggled. 26 years old and still giggling at our father's cruelty, like she was 7 and desperate for his approval. She probably was. He handed me a small box, wrapped in newspaper. Not even gift wrap. Newspaper. Inside was a bus ticket. One way. To Nevada. "It's time," Trent said, crossing his arms. "You've been a financial drain on this family long enough. We've sacrificed so much to put you through school, and now it's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. This ticket leaves tomorrow morning. We already cleaned out your room and donated your stuff. Fresh start for everyone." The parking lot was full of families hugging their graduates, taking pictures, crying happy tears. And there I stood, holding a bus ticket that cost $37, being told I was no longer welcome in the house I grew up in. Lorraine stepped forward. For 1 second, one tiny second, I thought she might say something. Her mouth opened. Her eyes met mine. Then she just hugged me, quick and tight, and whispered, "It's for the best, honey." I didn't cry. Hadn't cried over them in years. I just nodded, got in my car, and drove away. Brielle's laughter followed me out of the parking lot. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known because they never cared enough to ask, was that I'd spent the morning before graduation filming an interview with Channel 7 News. National broadcast. The reporter wanted to do a feature on young entrepreneurs disrupting the tech industry. They'd been chasing me for 3 months, but I kept saying no. Something told me to wait. So I waited until the day before graduation, went to their studio at 6 in the morning, and told the whole world exactly who I was. The interview aired the next morning at 9. I was on a plane to our New York office when my phone started exploding. Texts from old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. Emails from investors. 3 missed calls from Dorian, my business partner, saying, "You actually did it. You told them." But I wasn't ready to talk to anyone yet. I just wanted to watch. By noon, the video had 2 million views. By evening, 7 million. People were sharing it with captions like, "This is what Selmade looks like," and "She built an empire in secret." News outlets were picking it up, running their own stories. My face was everywhere. My name was everywhere. And somewhere in their living room, watching their old television that Trent refused to replace because the one we have works fine, My family was finally seeing what I'd become. Now, 2 days later, here they were. Standing outside the building that I designed, that I paid for, that I filled with 237 employees who actually valued their work. I zoomed in on Trent's face through the security camera. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. There were lines around his mouth that hadn't been there at graduation. Stress lines. Money lines. How long have they been waiting? I asked Marcus. He checked his tablet. 2 hours and 43 minutes. Make it 3 hours exactly, I said. Then bring them to conference room B. The small one. The smallest one. Marcus nodded and left. He didn't ask why. That's why I hired him. He understood that some decisions didn't need explanation. 3 hours. That's how long I'd waited alone at my high school graduation 5 years ago, while they went to celebrate Brielle getting 3rd place in some dance competition. I sat in those plastic auditorium chairs, watching families take pictures, watching fathers hug daughters, watching mothers cry with pride, and I waited. Kept thinking maybe they were just running late. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe they forgot which time the ceremony started. They showed up 4 hours later, annoyed that I was still hanging around the school. Trent said I was being dramatic. Brielle said I was desperate for attention. Lorraine said nothing at all. 3 hours felt generous. I turned away from the security monitor and walked to my office window. 37th floor. On clear days, you could see 3 states from up here. Today was clear. Below, the city moved like it always did, everyone chasing something, running toward dreams or away from nightmares. I'd done both. My phone buzzed. Dorian's name lit up the screen. "You're really going to see them?" he asked when I answered. "Yes, Kelly. I need to." He was quiet for a moment. Dorian had met my family exactly once, 3 years ago when he'd stopped by my college apartment unannounced and Trent happened to be there, complaining about having to co-sign my student loans. Dorian had seen the way Trent talked to me, the way Brielle interrupted every sentence I started, the way Lorraine looked at the floor instead of at me. He'd asked me afterward why I didn't just cut them off. I told him I would, eventually, when I was ready. "What are you going to say to them?" Dorian asked. "I don't know yet." "That's not like you. You always have a plan." He was right. I did always have a plan. But this was different. This was personal in a way business deals and contract negotiations never were. This was the people who were supposed to love me standing in my lobby, probably rehearsing apologies they didn't mean, trying to figure out how much money they could squeeze out of me before I realized they were only here because I had something they wanted. "I'll call you after," I said. "If you need me." "I know." I hung up and checked the time. 2 minutes until the 3-hour mark. I straightened my blazer, the navy one that cost more than Trent used to spend on me in an entire year. Checked my reflection in the window. Hair pulled back. No makeup except mascara. I wanted them to see my face clearly when I looked at them, and they finally understood what they'd thrown away. My phone buzzed again. "Marcus." "They're ready, ma'am." Conference room B. On my way. The walk from my office to the conference room took 90 seconds. 90 seconds to prepare for a conversation I'd imagined 1,000 different ways since I was 16 years old. Sometimes in my head, I screamed at them. Sometimes I was cold and dismissive. Sometimes I broke down crying and asked them why I was never enough. But now, walking down this hallway in my building, wearing my success like armor, I realized I didn't want to do any of those things. I just wanted them to see me. Really see me. Maybe for the first time. The conference room door was closed. Through the glass panel beside it, I could see 3 shapes sitting at the table. Waiting. I put my hand on the door handle and took one breath. Then I walked in. Trent started to stand. "Kelly, we..." The look on my face stopped him cold. He sat back down slowly, and for the first time in my entire life, I watched my father not know what to say. Brielle's mouth was open, but no sound came out. Lorraine's hands were folded on the table, gripping each other so tightly her knuckles had gone white. I didn't sit. I stood at the head of the table, exactly where I stood during every board meeting, every investor pitch, every moment that mattered in my professional life. And I looked at them the same way I looked at people trying to negotiate deals they had no leverage for. You have 5 minutes, I said. Make them count. Trent found his voice first. Of course he did. Silence had never been his problem. Listening was. Callie, sweetheart. For minutes and 50 seconds. He blinked. Adjusted himself in the chair like the problem was his posture, and not the fact that he'd spent 23 years treating his daughter like a budget line item he couldn't wait to cut. Right. Okay. We saw your interview. The whole thing. Very impressive. We had no idea you were doing so well. You never told us about any business, any company. We're your family. We should have known. I didn't respond. Just looked at him. Waited. Brielle jumped in, her voice doing that thing where it went up at the end of sentences like she was asking questions instead of making statements. Yeah, like, we're so proud of you. We always knew you were smart. But this is like, crazy successful? We had no idea. You never asked, I said. The room went quiet. Outside the glass walls, employees walked past, carrying tablets and coffee cups, living their normal Wednesday afternoon. None of them knew what was happening in here. None of them knew that the woman who signed their paychecks was currently standing 3 feet away from the people who'd spent her childhood convincing her she wasn't worth the investment. Lorraine finally spoke. Her voice came out thin and shaky, like she'd been holding her breath for the past 3 hours. Honey, we're sorry. About the ticket. About graduation. Your father didn't mean. Don't. I held up one hand. Don't do that. Don't speak for him. Don't make excuses. You've been doing that my entire life, and I'm tired of it. Her face crumpled. Tears formed in the corners of her eyes. Real ones, maybe. Or maybe just well-practiced ones. I couldn't tell anymore. When you grow up watching someone cry but never protect you, those tears start meaning less and less. Trent leaned forward, elbows on the table. Look, Callie, we made a mistake. We didn't understand your situation. We thought you were struggling, barely making it, wasting your time on computers when you should have been finding a real job. If we'd known. If you'd known I was rich, you would have treated me like a human being? I finished for him. That's not the defense you think it is. He froze. His jaw tightened. I'd seen that look before. That was the look that used to come right before he'd slam his hand on the dinner table and tell me I was ungrateful, disrespectful, too sensitive. But he couldn't do that here. Not in my building. Not at my table. That's not what I meant, he said carefully. Then what did you mean? I meant that we would have supported you better. Been there for you. Helped you navigate everything. You're young. You're going to make mistakes. You need family for that. The laugh that came out of me didn't sound like mine. It was too sharp, too bitter. I needed family when I was 8 years old, and you forgot my birthday because Brielle had a dance recital. I needed family when I was 12, and you screamed at me for 20 minutes about the cost of school supplies while Brielle's new laptop sat on the kitchen counter in a box. I needed family when I was 14, and you called me the expensive mistake at dinner and Mom just sat there. I needed family at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I don't need it anymore. Brielle's face went red. That's not fair. We did our best. Your best. I turned to her. Your best was laughing at every cruel thing Dad said to me? Your best was telling your friends I was adopted because you were embarrassed to have me as a sister? Your best was posting on social media about what a perfect family we were while treating me like I was invisible. You're being dramatic, she said, but her voice wavered. Am I? Tell me, Brielle, what's my favorite color? She stared at me. What? Simple question. We grew up in the same house for 18 years. What's my favorite color? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked at Trent, then Lorraine, like one of them might have the answer. None of them did. It's gray, I said quietly. Like the sky before a storm. I told you that when I was 9 years old. You said it was a stupid answer and that only weird people like gray. I stopped telling you anything after that. The silence that followed felt thick enough to touch. Heavy enough to crush. I could see them processing it, trying to find ways to rewrite history, to make it sound less terrible than it was. But some things can't be rewritten. Some things just are. Lorraine's tears were falling now, real or not. Callie, please. We want to fix this. Tell us how to fix this. You can't. Don't say that. We're family. No. The word came out harder than I meant it to. Your DNA. That's all. Family is the people who show up. Who protect you. Who see you. You never saw me. You saw a burden. An expense. Something to manage until you could ship it off somewhere else. Trent stood up suddenly. The chair scraped against the floor. We fed you. We clothed you. We put a roof over your head. Do you know how many kids would kill for what you had? There it was. The real Trent. The one who couldn't pretend anymore. You did the legal minimum required to not get arrested for neglect, I said. Congratulations. You want a trophy? His face went purple. You ungrateful. Careful. My voice dropped low. Dangerous. You're in my building. At my table. Speaking to someone who could buy and sell your entire life 3 times over before lunch. Choose your next words very carefully. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the girl who used to flinch when he raised his voice was so buried under layers of success and self-preservation that she didn't exist anymore. Good. I'd killed her on purpose. She deserved to die. She'd suffered long enough. Trent sat back down slowly. We need help, he said finally. That's why we're here. I'm being honest. We need money. At least that was true. I could work with truth. How much debt are you in? I asked. He looked at Lorraine. She looked at the table. Brielle inspected her fingernails like they were suddenly fascinating. 200,000, Trent admitted. The business went under. Medical bills piled up. Credit cards. The house is going into foreclosure in 30 days. And you thought you'd come here, say sorry, and I'd write you a check? We're family, he said again, like repeating it would make it true. I walked to the window. Looked down at the city. 37 floors between me and the ground. Sometimes I still felt like I was falling. When I was 16, I said, not turning around, I taught myself to code in the school library. Every day after classes, I'd stay until they kicked me out at closing. I'd go home and you'd complain that I wasn't helping with dinner. That I was wasting time. That computers weren't a real skill. Do you remember that? No answer. I'd come home excited about something I built, and you'd tell me to be quiet because the game was on. Or Brielle was telling a story. Or you were tired. I stopped coming home excited. I stopped coming home at all unless I had to. I turned around. Faced them. When I was 18, I met Dorian. He was a college freshman who actually listened when I talked. Who saw what I was building and said it was brilliant. We worked together every night for 3 years. Vending machine dinners. No sleep. Big dreams. At 19, we had a prototype. At 20, our first deal. At 21, we signed a contract worth $40 million. Brielle gasped. Trent's eyes went wide. Lorraine just stared. I never told you any of this. You know why? Because you never asked. Not once. Not in 4 years of college did you ask me what I was studying, what I was working on, if I was okay. You called me twice a semester to complain about bills. That's it. So I built an empire, and I built it without you. I didn't need your support. I didn't need your approval. I just needed you to leave me alone long enough to become someone who couldn't be hurt by you anymore. Callie, Lorraine started. I bought your house, I said. They froze. 2 weeks ago. Foreclosure auction. I had my lawyers handle it quietly. Paid cash. You're living in a house I own. You're technically my tenants now. Trent's face went from purple to white. You what? I bought it before you lost it. Because despite everything, despite the bus ticket and the cruelty and the years of being invisible, some stupid part of me still didn't want to watch you end up on the street. So you're going to help us? Brielle asked, hope creeping into her voice. I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 envelopes. Plain white. No labels. I placed them on the table between us. You have a choice, I said. Option A or option B. Pick one. But choose carefully, because what you pick will show me exactly who you are. Trent reached for them. I put my hand down flat on both envelopes. I'm not explaining what's inside. You don't get to make an informed decision based on what benefits you most. You get to make a choice based on faith. On trust. On believing that maybe, somewhere deep down, I still care enough to offer you something real. I lifted my hand. Stepped back. I'll be in my office. Marcus will bring me your answer in 1 hour. I walked to the door. stopped, didn't turn around. For what it's worth, I said quietly, I didn't want it to be like this. I wanted to walk across that graduation stage and see you in the audience. I wanted to hear you say you were proud of me. I wanted to introduce you to Dorian and show you what we built and watch you realize that your daughter was someone worth knowing. But you handed me a bus ticket instead. So here we are. I walked out and closed the door behind me. The hallway felt colder than before. Or maybe that was just me. Marcus caught up with me outside my office. He was holding his tablet like a shield, the way he always did when he wasn't sure how I'd react to something. They're arguing, he said. Loud enough that people are starting to notice. Let them argue. I walked into my office and closed the door. Leaned against it. Breathed. My hands were shaking. I hadn't realized that until now. I pressed them flat against the cool wood of the door until they steadied. Control. I'd built my entire adult life on control. Couldn't lose it now. Through the window, the city stretched out endlessly. Somewhere down there were people having normal family dinners. Fathers who asked their daughters about their day. Sisters who actually liked each other. Mothers who spoke up when something was wrong. Somewhere down there was the life I'd never had. My phone buzzed. Dorian again. How bad? He asked when I picked up. They want money. House is in foreclosure. 200,000 in debt. Did you tell them you already bought the house? Yes. And I gave them 2 choices. Now they're fighting about it in my conference room. Dorian was quiet for a second. You know they're going to pick the money, right? People like that always do. Maybe. Kelly, come on. We've been over this. Your father is a narcissist. Your sister is his golden child who never learned empathy. Your mother is an enabler who chose peace over protecting you. They're not going to suddenly become different people because you're successful now. I know. So why give them options? Why not just cut them off? Because some part of me, the part that was still 8 years old and waiting for a birthday cake that never came, wanted to believe people could change. Wanted to believe that if I gave them one more chance, one more opportunity to prove they loved me more than they loved what I could give them, they'd surprise me. I need to know for sure, I said. I need to see them make the choice so I can stop wondering. And if they pick wrong, then I'll finally be free. Dorian sighed. All right. I'm here if you need me. Don't do anything stupid. Like forgive them too easily. You've worked too hard to let them drag you back down. We hung up. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, tried to focus on emails, but the words blurred together. My mind kept going back to that conference room. To 3 people sitting around a table, deciding if I was worth more to them as a daughter or as a bank account. The envelopes had been simple. Clean. Inside option A, 3 checks, $50,000 each, and legal documents severing all familial ties. They'd sign away their rights as parents and sibling. In exchange, they'd get enough money to start over somewhere else. Away from me. Forever. Inside option B, no money, but an offer to live in the house rent-free for 1 year while attending mandatory family therapy together. Every week. No excuses. No money, just time. Just a chance to rebuild something that had never really existed in the first place. I'd spent 3 weeks designing those options with my therapist. Dr. Reeves had asked me what I actually wanted. Not what I thought I should want. Not what would look good or feel like justice. What did I actually want? The truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted revenge. Wanted to watch them realize what they'd lost. Wanted them to spend the rest of their lives regretting every cruel word, every forgotten moment, every time they chose Brielle over me. But another part, the part one tried to ignore, just wanted a mom. A dad. A sister. A family that felt like home instead of a battlefield. Dr. Reeves said that was normal. Said I could want 2 opposite things at the same time and both could be valid. She also said that I needed to prepare myself for the likelihood that they'd choose the money. That people who'd spent decades proving they didn't value you wouldn't suddenly change just because you were successful. I'd nodded. Said I understood. But understanding something intellectually and accepting it emotionally were 2 different things. 53 minutes had passed when Marcus knocked on my door. They're ready, he said. My stomach dropped. Already? Mr. Mercer tried to open both envelopes. I had to stop him. Told him that was against the rules. He wasn't happy. Of course he wasn't. Trent had never been good at following rules he didn't make himself. And they each made their choice. Separate envelopes, like you requested. I stood up, straightened my blazer. Bring them in. Marcus hesitated. Ma'am, are you sure you want to do this here? You could wait until. Now, Marcus. Please. He nodded and disappeared. I heard the conference room door open down the hall. Heard 3 sets of footsteps. Heard Trent's voice saying something I couldn't make out. Then they were at my door. They filed in silently. Trent looked angry, jaw clenched tight. Brielle looked scared, eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape route. Lorraine looked tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. She looked like she'd been tired for years and was just now realizing it. Sit, I said, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. They sat. I remained standing. Small power play, maybe, but it mattered. In this building, in this office, I controlled the space. They were visitors in my world now. Marcus tells me you've made your choices, I said. Trent cleared his throat. Before we get into that, I think we should talk about. No. I held up a hand. We're not negotiating. You pick one. That's it. Marcus, do you have the envelopes? He stepped forward, holding 3 sealed envelopes. Each had a name written on the front in my handwriting. He placed them on my desk. Open them, I said. I picked up Trent's first. Opened it slowly. Inside was a small card with a single letter written on it. I read it. Didn't let my face show anything. Set it down. Picked up Brielle's. Read it. Set it down. Finally, Lorraine's. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Trent, I said, looking at my father for what might be the last time. You chose option A, $50,000 and no contact ever again. His face stayed neutral. No shame. No regret. Just acceptance. It's the practical choice. We need money now, not therapy sessions that might not even work. Right. Practical. I turned to Brielle. You chose option A as well. $50,000 and you never have to see me again. She had the decency to look down at her hands. I just think it's better if we all have space to heal separately, you know? Sometimes families aren't meant to be close. Fascinating, I said. And convenient, since that also comes with a large check. Finally, I looked at Lorraine. My mother. The woman who'd carried me for 9 months, given birth to me, raised me, and never once stood between me and my father's cruelty. You chose option B, I said. Trent's head snapped toward her. You what? I chose option B, Lorraine repeated, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. Therapy. Time. No money. A chance to fix what's broken. Are you insane? Brielle stood up. Mom, we need that money. The house. The house is Callie's now anyway, Lorraine said. She already told us that. And the money would be gone in a year, probably less knowing your father. But therapy? Time? That's the only thing we've never given her. So that's what I'm choosing. Trent stood too. You don't make decisions for this family. This family? Lorraine's voice cracked. Trent, look around. We're not a family. We're 3 people who've been tearing apart a 4th person for 23 years. I'm done. I'm so tired of being quiet. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when I've watched you destroy our daughter piece by piece. I gave her everything. You gave her nothing. Lorraine was crying now, but she didn't stop talking. You gave her a house and food and clothes because that's what the law required. But you never gave her love. You never gave her patience or kindness or even basic respect. And I stood there and let it happen because I was scared. Because I thought keeping the peace was more important than protecting my child. But I was wrong. I've been wrong for 23 years. She turned to me. Callie, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I failed you in every way a mother can fail. But if you're offering me one more chance, 1 year to try to fix even a fraction of what I broke, I'm taking it. I don't want the money. I want my daughter back. The office went silent. Outside, I could hear the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. Someone's phone ringing down the hall. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary day. But nothing about this was ordinary. You can't be serious, Trent said to Lorraine. You're going to throw away $50,000 for therapy sessions with a daughter who clearly hates us? I don't hate you, I said quietly. I just don't love you anymore. There's a difference. Trent turned to me. Fine. I'll take my money and go. I don't need this. I don't need a daughter who thinks she's better than me just because she got lucky with some computer program. Lucky. I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. Yes. For years of working 18-hour days was luck. Teaching myself 3 programming languages was luck. Building a company from nothing was luck. You keep telling yourself that, Trent. I pulled out 2 checks from my desk drawer. Already written. Already signed. I'd prepared for this outcome. $50,000 each, I said, sliding them across the desk. Marcus has your paperwork waiting in conference room A. You'll sign documents agreeing to no contact. No emails. No calls. No showing up at my building. No public statements about me or my company. If you violate the agreement, you pay back the full amount plus 50% interest. Marcus will explain everything else. Brielle grabbed her check immediately. Trent took his more slowly, looking at it like he was trying to find a trap. That's it? He asked. We just sign and leave? That's it. And what about your mother? What about her? She's choosing therapy. No money. She'll have nothing. Where's she supposed to live? I looked at Lorraine. Really looked at her. She was 51 years old. Gray hair she used to dye but had stopped bothering with. Lines around her eyes from years of stress. She looked smaller than I remembered. Frilier. But her eyes were clear, maybe for the first time since I could remember. She can stay in the house, I said. Rent-free. For 1 year. While we do therapy. If she commits to it. And if she doesn't? Trent asked. If she backs out or quits or decides it's too hard? Then she's out. But that's her choice to make. Not yours. Trent stared at me for a long moment. I couldn't read his expression. Didn't want to. Finally, he pocketed the check. You've changed, he said. You're cold now. Hard. That's what money does to people. No, I said. That's what you did to people. To me. I'm not cold. I'm protected. There's a difference. He didn't have an answer for that. Just turned and walked toward the door. Brielle followed, clutching her check like a life raft. At the door, Trent stopped. Didn't turn around. You'll regret this someday. When you're older and alone and you realize you pushed your family away over pride. Maybe, I said. But I'll be alone with $50 million and a clear conscience. You'll be alone with $50,000 and the knowledge that you chose it over your daughter. I'll take my chances. He left. The door closed. And just like that, my father and sister walked out of my life, probably forever. The girl I used to be would have cried. Would have chased after them. Would have apologized for being too much trouble and begged them to stay. But I wasn't her anymore. She died somewhere between the library computers and the boardroom victories. And I didn't miss her. Lorraine was still sitting in her chair. Her hands were folded in her lap, shaking slightly. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, I said. Therapy is hard. It's going to hurt. We're going to have to talk about things you've spent decades avoiding. And there's a chance we'll go through all of it and still end up with nothing. I know. So why choose it? Why not take the money and run like they did? She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Because I've been running my whole life. From my marriage. From my failures. From the truth of what I let happen to you. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of running. Maybe it won't work. Maybe you'll never forgive me. But at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll be able to live with myself. I wanted to believe her. Wanted so badly to believe that one person in my family was capable of change. But belief was dangerous. Belief left you open. Vulnerable. The first therapy session is Monday, I said. 10 a.m. Dr. Reeves' office. If you miss it, we're done. I'll be there. If you're late, I won't be late. If you make excuses, Kelly. She stood up. I'll be there. I promise. Promises. The word hung in the air between us. How many promises had been broken in this family? How many times, huh? I heard, I promise, followed by disappointment. We'll see, I said. She nodded. Started to leave. Stopped at the door the same way Trent had. But unlike him, she turned around. For what it's worth, she said, I am proud of you. I know I never said it when it mattered. I know saying it now doesn't fix anything. But you need to know. I see what you've built, who you've become. And I'm proud. I'm sorry I never told you that when you needed to hear it most. She left before I could respond. The door clicked shut softly. And then I was alone in my office, surrounded by everything I'd built, everything I'd earned, everything that was supposed to make me feel complete. I sat down in my chair, stared at the 2 checks still sitting on my desk, the ones Trent and Brielle had taken. Marcus would make copies. There would be a paper trail. Legal protection. Everything documented and official. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Are you okay? I didn't know how to answer that. Was I okay? I just watched my father and sister choose money over me. Again. Different circumstances, same result. But I'd also watched my mother choose differently. Choose harder. Choose me. Was that enough? I opened my laptop. An email notification popped up. Subject line, legal notice. Trent Mercer versus Mercer Tech Solutions. My blood went cold. I clicked it open. Read the first paragraph. Then the second. Then the whole thing twice to make sure I was understanding correctly. Trent was being sued. Had been sued. 3 months ago. By a former business partner named Richard Chin. The lawsuit claimed that Trent had embezzled $240,000 from their joint company, falsified records to frame Richard, and caused Richard to be wrongfully convicted and imprisoned for 18 months. Richard had just been released. New evidence had come to light. And now he was coming after everyone involved, including Trent. The email was from Richard's attorney. They'd been trying to reach me for weeks. Wanted to know if I had any information about my father's business practices. Any documentation. Anything that could help their case. I sat back in my chair. Stared at the ceiling. Started laughing. Couldn't help it. The universe had a sense of humor after all. My father hadn't just needed money. He'd needed it desperately. Not for medical bills or credit cards or even the house. He needed it because he was about to be buried in legal fees and restitution. He was about to go to prison. And he'd tried to get money from me without telling me why. Another email came through. This one from a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it. It was addressed to me. Marked urgent. They represented Richard Chin. They were asking if I'd be willing to testify about my father's character. About his business dealings. About anything I might know. My finger hovered over the delete button. This wasn't my problem. Trent had made his choices. He could live with the consequences. I didn't owe him anything. Especially not protection. But if I testified, if I helped put my own father in prison, what did that make me? My phone rang. Dorian. You need to see something, he said when I answered. I'm sending you a link. What kind of link? Just open it. A text came through. I clicked it. A news article loaded. Local paper. 3-month-old story. Headline. Local businessman imprisoned for embezzlement maintains innocence. Below it was a photo. Richard Chin. Asian man, early 40s. Standing with his wife and 2 daughters outside a courthouse. He looked exhausted. Defeated. His daughters were young. Maybe 8 and 10 years old. They looked confused. Scared. I read the article. Richard had owned a small manufacturing company with Trent. They'd been partners for 7 years. Then money started disappearing. Records showed Richard making unauthorized withdrawals. Trent had discovered the fraud, reported it, testified against Richard. Richard went to prison. Lost everything. His wife had to sell their house. The daughters moved in with their grandmother. But Richard kept insisting he was innocent. Kept saying Trent had set him up. Nobody believed him. Until an anonymous accountant came forward 3 months ago with original documents showing the money had actually gone to offshore accounts in Trent's name. The case was reopened. Richard was released. Now he wanted justice. Kelly? Dorian's voice pulled me back. You still there? Yeah. Your father destroyed that man's life. I know. If you testify, you could help make it right. I know. But if you testify, you'll be helping to send your own father to prison. I know. I stared at the photo. At Richard's daughters. 8 and 10 years old. The same ages I was when my father started treating me like I was worthless. Those girls had lost their dad for 18 months because mine had lied. Because mine had stolen and cheated and ruined an innocent man's life to save himself. What are you going to do? Dorian asked. The door to my office opened. Marcus stepped in, holding a manila envelope. His face was pale. Ma'am, you need to see this. It just arrived. By courier. It's from. I know who it's from, I said. He placed the envelope on my desk. It was sealed. My name was written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A letter. Handwritten. Dear Ms. Mercer, my name is Richard Chin. I don't know if you remember me. I was your father's business partner. I came to your house once for a barbecue when you were about 12 years old. You were sitting in the garage, working on something with wires and circuits. I asked what you were building. You said a security system. I said that was impressive. You smiled. I want you to know that I don't blame you for what your father did. You were a child. This isn't your fault. But I'm writing because I need your help. I lost 18 months of my life in prison for something I didn't do. I lost my business, my home, my reputation. My daughters grew up thinking their father was a criminal. My wife had to work 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I'm not asking you to choose between your father and me. I'm asking you to choose between right and wrong, between truth and lies, between justice and silence. If you have any information about your father's business practices, any emails, any documents, any conversations you remember, I'm asking you to share them. Not for revenge. Not for money. For the truth. My lawyer's contact information is at the bottom of this page. Thank you for reading this. Richard Chin. I set the letter down. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. And for the first time in 48 hours, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Marcus, I said. Set up a meeting with Richard Chen's attorney. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Ma'am, are you sure? I'm sure. He nodded and left. I looked at Dorian's name still lit up on my phone screen. I'm going to testify, I said. I'm going to tell them everything I know. And if that sends my father to prison, then that's what he chose when he destroyed an innocent man's life. Kelly. I have 2, Dorian. Those girls lost their father because mine is a coward. If I stay silent, I'm no better than my mother was all those years. I'm just another person choosing the easy path over the right one. Dorian was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I'm with you. Whatever you need. Thank you. But Callie, this is going to get messy. Really messy. Are you ready for that? I looked around my office. At the diplomas on the wall. The awards. The framed photo of me and Dorian on the day we signed our first big contract. The life I'd built from nothing but determination and spite, and the desperate need to prove I was worth something. I've been ready my whole life, I said. The meeting with Richard Chen's attorney was scheduled for 9 a.m. I showed up at 8:45 wearing my courtroom suit, the black one I saved for depositions and serious negotiations. Marcus had offered to come with me for support, but I'd told him no. This was something I needed to do alone. The law office was smaller than I expected. 3 floors in an older building downtown. Not the sleek glass towers where corporate lawyers worked. This was the kind of place where people came when they couldn't afford the fancy firms, but still needed someone to fight for them. The receptionist led me to a conference room. Inside, a woman in her mid-50s was setting up a laptop and legal pads. She looked up when I entered. Ms. Mercer? I'm Linda Ortega. Thank you for coming. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. Professional. She gestured to a chair and I sat. I'll be honest, she said, pulling out a thick file. When I sent that letter to Richard, I didn't think you'd respond. Most people don't want to get involved in situations like this, especially when it means testifying against family. Trent Mercer stopped being my family a long time ago, I said. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Let me explain where we are with the case. Richard was convicted 18 months ago based primarily on falsified documents and your father's testimony. Trent claimed Richard had been embezzling funds and presented bank records showing unauthorized transfers. Richard maintained his innocence, but couldn't prove it. The evidence seemed overwhelming. But it wasn't real, I said. No. 3 months ago, an accountant who used to work for your father's company contacted us anonymously. Said he'd kept copies of the original documents before Trent altered them. The originals show the money going to offshore accounts under your father's name. We brought this new evidence to the prosecutor. Richard was released, and now we're building a criminal case against Trent. She pulled out photos, bank statements, email printouts. The problem is, Trent covered his tracks well. Most of the evidence is circumstantial. We can prove the documents were altered, but proving Trent did it personally is harder. That's where you come in. What do you need from me? Anything that establishes a pattern of behavior. Lies, manipulations, financial misconduct. Character testimony is powerful. If you can speak to his history of dishonesty, it strengthens our case considerably. I thought about the years of lies. The way Trent always seemed to have money for Brielle, but never for me. The times bill collectors called and he'd act shocked, like he had no idea what they were talking about. The way he'd blame everyone else for his problems. I can give you plenty, I said. But I need to know something first. What happens to Richard if we lose? Linda's expression softened. He's already lost 18 months of his life. His reputation. His business. His savings. If we lose this case, Trent walks free and Richard gets nothing. No justice. No closure. Just the knowledge that the man who destroyed his life got away with it. And if we win? Trent goes to prison. 5 to 10 years, probably. Richard gets restitution. More importantly, his name gets cleared publicly. His daughters get to know their father wasn't a criminal. I thought about those two girls in the photo. About what it meant to grow up thinking your father was guilty of something terrible. I knew what it was like to have a father who disappointed you. But at least I knew the truth. They'd been living with a lie. Tell me what you need, I said. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. Linda asked about Trent's business practices, his behavior with money, any conversations I'd overheard. I told her about the times he'd claimed to pay bills that never got paid. The way he'd hide credit card statements from Lorraine. The time I'd found a second cell phone in his car, and he'd said it was for work, but later I'd heard him lying to someone about where he was. Did you ever suspect he was embezzling? Linda asked. No. I just thought he was bad with money. But looking back, the signs were there. He always had cash when he said we were broke. He'd complain about bills, but somehow afford expensive gifts for Brielle. The numbers never added up. Would you be willing to testify to all of this in court? I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to help Richard, but because once I did this, there was no going back. Trent would know I'd betrayed him. Brielle would know. The whole world would know I'd helped send my own father to prison. Yes, I said. I'll testify. Linda smiled. Thank you. You're doing the right thing. The right thing. People always said that like it was simple. Like right and wrong were clearly marked paths and all you had to do was choose. But it didn't feel simple. It felt messy and complicated and scary. Can I meet him? I asked. Richard? Linda paused. Are you sure that's a good idea? I need to look him in the eye. I need to know this is real. She pulled out her phone. Made a call. Spoke quietly. Hung up. He's at home. 20 minutes from here. If you're serious, I can take you. I'm serious. We drove in Linda's car, a 10-year-old sedan with a crack in the windshield and fast food receipts on the floor. She talked about the case while she drove, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about what I'd say to Richard. How do you apologize for something that wasn't your fault but was connected to you anyway? His house was small. One story. Modest. The kind of place that probably cost everything he had left after legal fees and lost income. Linda parked and we walked to the front door together. Richard answered on the second knock. He looked older than his photo. Thinner. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. But when he saw me, his eyes filled with something I wasn't expecting. Relief. Ms. Mercer, he said. Thank you for coming. We sat in his living room. His wife, Jennifer, brought coffee. Their daughters were at school, Linda had said. Which was probably for the best. I didn't know if I could handle seeing them. I read your letter, I said. The one you sent to my office. I wasn't sure if you'd receive it. Or if you'd care. I care. He nodded slowly. Your father and I were partners for 7 years. I trusted him. Considered him a friend. When the money started disappearing, I thought maybe there was a mistake. An accounting error. I never imagined he'd set me up. I'm sorry, I said. For what he did. For what you lost. It's not your fault. I know. But I'm still sorry. Jennifer spoke up from across the room. The worst part wasn't Richard being in prison. It was watching our daughters grow up thinking their father was a thief. They stopped inviting friends over. Got bullied at school. Emma, our youngest, started telling people we'd moved because she was so ashamed. My throat tightened. I understand what it's like to be ashamed of a parent. You do. My father didn't go to prison, but he hurt me in other ways. For a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. That I was the problem. It took years to realize the problem was him. Richard leaned forward. Ms. Mercer. Callie. Please. Callie. I know what testifying will cost you. The publicity. The judgment. People will say terrible things about you for going against your father. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I thought about the interviews that would come. The articles. The comment sections. People loved a scandal, especially one involving family betrayal. Half would call me brave. Half would call me a traitor. Neither would know the full story. I've spent my whole life being prepared for things I shouldn't have had to face, I said. This is just one more. We talked for another hour. Richard told me about his daughters, about rebuilding his life, about the nightmares he still had about prison. Jennifer told me about working 3 jobs, about lying awake wondering how they'd pay rent, about the day Richard was released and how they'd all cried in the courthouse parking lot. When it was time to leave, Richard walked me to the door. Why are you doing this? He asked. Really? I thought about those 2 little girls who'd lost their father for 18 months. About the lessons they'd learned about trust and justice and what happens when bad people get away with hurting good ones. About the kind of adults they'd become if nobody fought for the truth. Because someone has to, I said. And because I know what it's like to have a father who doesn't deserve the title. Your daughters deserve better. You deserve better. He hugged me. Quick and tight. Thank you. Linda drove me back to my car. We didn't talk much. When she dropped me off, she handed me her card. The preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks. I'll be in touch with details. In the meantime, don't talk to your father. Don't talk to anyone in your family about this. And be prepared for things to get ugly. They've been ugly my whole life, I said. I can handle it. I drove back to my office. Sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes, just breathing. My phone had 17 missed calls. 10 from blocked numbers. 7 from Lorraine. I called her back. Callie, thank God, she answered. Trent knows. About the lawsuit. About Richard. He's furious. He's saying terrible things. He's threatening to. To what, Mom? What's he going to do? She was quiet. That's what I thought, I said. He's all threats and no substance. Always has been. He wants me to talk to you. To convince you not to testify. And are you going to? No. I'm calling to ask if you're okay. If you need anything. If you want me to be there when. I'm fine. Callie. I have to go, Mom. I'll see you Monday for therapy. I'll be there. I promise. I hung up. Stared at my phone. Another call was coming through. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Kelly Mercer? A male voice. Professional. Yes. This is Detective Morrison with the District Attorney's Office. I'm calling regarding the Chin case. We'd like to schedule a formal interview before the preliminary hearing. Are you available tomorrow? Yes. Great. 2 p.m. I'll send you the address. And Ms. Mercer? Thank you for coming forward. Not many people have the courage to do what you're doing. Courage. That word again. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like survival. Like I was finally breaking the chains my father had spent 23 years wrapping around my neck. I went up to my office. Marcus was waiting with a stack of messages and a concerned expression. Are you okay? He asked. Define okay. Fair point. These are urgent. He handed me the stack. 3 from investors asking about the publicity. 5 from reporters wanting interviews. And 1 from your father's lawyer. I froze. What did they want? He wouldn't say. Just that it was time sensitive and you should call back immediately. I threw the message in the trash. If he calls again, tell him I have nothing to say. Understood. I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work. Failed miserably. Finally gave up around 6 and went home. My penthouse felt too quiet. Too big. I stood at the window, looking down at the city, thinking about how far I'd come and how much further I still had to fall. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorian. Saw the news. The arrest warrant is out. I'm here if you need me. Arrest warrant. So it was real. Happening. No going back now. I pulled up the news on my laptop. There it was. Front page of the local paper. Prominent businessman faces embezzlement charges. Trent's photo. Older, grayer, meaner looking than I remembered. The article detailed the charges. Falsifying documents. Embezzlement. Fraud. Perjury. If convicted, 5 to 15 years in prison. There was a quote from Richard's lawyer praising the DA's office. And at the bottom, one line that made my blood run cold. Sources say Trent Mercer's daughter, tech entrepreneur Callie Mercer, is cooperating with investigators. My phone started ringing. Didn't stop. Unknown numbers. Blocked numbers. Reporters, probably. Looking for a quote. A reaction. A soundbite they could use to make me famous or infamous depending on which sold more papers. I turned off my phone. Poured a glass of wine. Sat in the dark and waited for the guilt to come. It didn't. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Something light and clean and strangely peaceful. Freedom. The preliminary hearing was held on a Thursday morning in a courthouse that smelled like old wood and broken promises. I arrived early, wearing the same black suit I'd worn to meet Linda. Marcus had offered to come. Dorian had insisted. I'd told them both no. Some things you had to face alone. Lorraine was waiting on the steps outside. She looked smaller than ever in a gray cardigan that had seen better days. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. I wanted to be here, she said. I know you didn't ask me to come, but I thought you might need. You can go inside with me, I said. But sit in the back. And don't say anything to him. I wouldn't. We walked in together. The courtroom was already half full. Reporters in the back rows. Richard and Jennifer in the front with Linda. And on the other side, behind the defense table, sat Trent and Brielle. Trent looked thinner. Harder. His suit didn't fit right anymore, like he'd lost weight quickly. Brielle sat next to him, arms crossed, face set in a permanent skull. When she saw me, her expression shifted to something between hatred and betrayal. I didn't look away. Just walked past them to the prosecution's side and sat behind Richard. He turned around. Thank you for being here. Where else would I be? The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. It was technical mostly. Lawyers arguing about evidence and procedures. The prosecution laid out their case. Showed the falsified documents. Presented the accountant's testimony. Explained how Trent had systematically stolen money and framed Richard to cover it up. Trent's lawyer argued back. Said the evidence was circumstantial. That the accountant was unreliable. That Trent was a respected businessman being targeted unfairly. Then Linda stood up. Your Honor, the prosecution would like to call a witness to establish character and pattern of behavior. Proceed. We call Callie Mercer to the stand. The courtroom went silent. I felt every eye turn toward me. Felt Trent's stare burning into the side of my face. Felt Brielle's disgust and Lorraine's fear and Richard's hope all at once. I stood. Walked to the witness stand. Got sworn in. Sat down. Linda approached with a kind smile. Ms. Mercer, can you state your relationship to the defendant? He's my biological father. And you're here today voluntarily? Yes. Can you tell the court about your father's relationship with money and honesty growing up? I took a breath. Looked at Trent. He was staring at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. My father lied about money constantly, I said. He'd tell us we were broke, but somehow have cash for things he wanted. He'd hide credit card statements. Blame my mother for overspending when he was the one making unauthorized purchases. I found a second cell phone in his car once. He said it was for work. Later I heard him using it to lie to someone about where he was. Objection. Trent's lawyer stood. This is hearsay and irrelevant. Your Honor, this establishes a pattern of deception directly relevant to the charges, Linda countered. I'll allow it. Continue. Linda turned back to me. Did you ever witness your father falsifying documents or lying about business matters? Yes. When I was 17, I overheard him on the phone with someone from his company. He was telling them to change numbers on a report before submitting it to a client. When I asked about it later, he said I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. Did your father ever discuss his business partner, Richard Chin? Once. I was home from college for winter break. He was angry, drinking. He said Richard was getting too curious about certain accounts. That he needed to find a way to handle the problem before Richard figured things out. Trent's face went red. His lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear. And did you think anything of that conversation at the time? Linda asked. I thought he was just venting. I didn't know he was planning to frame an innocent man for crimes he'd committed himself. Objection. The witness is speculating. Sustained. Ms. Mercer, please stick to what you directly witnessed or heard. I apologize, Your Honor. I looked at the judge. What I directly witnessed was a man who lied to his family, his business partners, and anyone else when it benefited him. What I directly heard was him saying he needed to handle Richard before Richard discovered something. 3 months later, Richard was arrested. I'll let the jury connect those dots. The courtroom erupted. Trent's lawyer was shouting. Linda was smiling. The judge banged his gavel. Order. I'll have order in this court. When things settled, Linda asked a few more questions. I answered each one honestly. Told the truth about the father I'd grown up with. The lies. The manipulations. The way he'd destroy anyone who got in his way, including his own daughter. Then it was the defense's turn. Trent's lawyer approached me like I was a bomb that might explode. Ms. Mercer, isn't it true that you have a contentious relationship with your father? Yes. And isn't it true that he recently declined to give you money when you asked for it? No. That's not true. No? So you never asked him for financial support? I'm worth $200 million. Why would I need his money? The lawyer faltered. Right. Well, isn't it true that you're here today out of revenge? That you're trying to hurt your father because he hurt you? I smiled. Not a nice smile. I'm here because a man spent 18 months in prison for something he didn't do. Because 2 little girls thought their father was a criminal when he wasn't. Because justice matters more than family loyalty when family was never loyal to begin with. So you admit this is personal. Everything about this is personal. My father destroyed Richard Chen's life the same way he spent 23 years destroying mine. The difference is, Richard gets a chance at justice. I just get therapy and the knowledge that I'm not like my father. I don't let innocent people suffer for my mistakes. The lawyer tried a few more questions. Got nowhere. Finally gave up and sat down. The judge looked at me. Ms. Mercer, you're excused. I stood. Walked back to my seat. Didn't look at Trent. Didn't need to. I'd said what I came to say. The hearing continued for another hour. More testimony. More evidence. Finally, the judge made his ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I'm finding probable cause to proceed to trial. The defendant will remain free on bail with travel restrictions. Trial is set for 8 weeks from today. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was done. Richard turned around, tears in his eyes. Thank you. You don't have to thank me for telling the truth. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. Lorraine grabbed my arm, and we pushed through together until we reached my car. You were brave in there, she said. I was honest. That's different. To some people, honesty is the bravest thing there is. I looked at her. Really looked. She'd been in therapy for 4 weeks now. Individual sessions twice a week. We hadn't started the family sessions yet. Those were scheduled to begin next week. But something about her had changed. She stood straighter. Spoke clearer. Met my eyes instead of looking at the ground. How are you doing? I asked. Really? It's hard. Therapy. Looking at all the things I did wrong. All the times I chose silence over you. But it's good. Painful, but good. Dr. Reeves is helping me understand why I was so afraid. Why I let Trent control everything. And I'm learning that I don't have to be afraid anymore. That I can choose differently now, even if I didn't then. We stood there in the parking lot while reporters shouted and cameras clicked somewhere behind us. I'm proud of you, Lorraine said quietly. For testifying. For standing up. For being brave enough to do what's right even when it's hard. You said that before. At my office. I know. But I need you to hear it until you believe it. Because I don't think anyone ever told you enough. And that's my fault. Something in my chest cracked. Not broke. Just cracked enough to let a little light in. I'll see you Monday, I said. 10 a.m. Don't be late. I won't. She hugged me. I let her. Then she got in her car and drove away, and I was alone in the parking lot with my thoughts and my choices and the weight of what came next. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Documents. Testimony. Financial records. The accountant who'd come forward explained exactly how Trent had altered the paperwork. An IT expert showed how Trent had accessed Richard's computer to make it look like Richard had authorized the transfers. I testified again. This time for hours. Told the jury everything I knew about my father's character. His lies. His manipulations. The way he'd always blamed others for his problems. Trent's lawyer tried to paint me as a bitter daughter seeking revenge. But it didn't work. The evidence was too strong. The truth too obvious. On the final day, Richard took the stand. Told the jury about losing 18 months of his life. About his daughters growing up ashamed. About his wife working herself sick trying to keep their family afloat. About the nightmares that still woke him up at 3 a.m., back in that cell, wondering if anyone would ever believe him. When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Came back with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Trent showed no emotion. Just stared straight ahead while the judge read the sentence. 8 years in prison. Full restitution to Richard. Permanent prohibition from serving as a business officer. 8 years. He'd be 63 when he got out. If he got out. Men like Trent didn't do well in prison. Brielle ran from the courtroom crying. Lorraine sat beside me, quiet and still. When it was over, when they led Trent away in handcuffs, she reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you from him. I know. Do you forgive me? Did I? Forgiveness was complicated. Messy. It wasn't a switch you flipped. It was a process. A journey. We'd been doing family therapy for 6 weeks now. Making progress. Learning to talk without screaming. Learning to be honest without cruelty. Learning that family wasn't about DNA, it was about choice and effort and showing up even when it was hard. I'm working on it, I said. That's the best I can do right now. That's enough. We walked out of the courthouse together. Richard and Jennifer were on the steps, talking to reporters. When Richard saw me, he broke away and came over. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You already did. You fought for the truth. That's all anyone can do. My girls want to meet you. Would that be okay? I thought about 2 little girls who'd spent 18 months believing their father was a criminal. Who'd learned hard lessons about justice and truth and what happens when bad people get away with hurting good ones. Yes, I said. I'd like that. 3 months later, I stood in front of 200 teenagers at a community center on the east side of town. It was a place for kids from broken homes, struggling families, impossible situations. The kind of place I would have needed when I was their age. I'd been invited to speak about entrepreneurship and success. But I wasn't going to talk about business plans or marketing strategies. I was going to tell them the truth. My name is Kelly Mercer, I said. And I'm going to tell you about the day my father gave me a bus ticket and told me to disappear. The room went silent. 200 faces watching me. Waiting. I told them everything. The neglect. The cruelty. The way I taught myself to code in a library because home wasn't safe. The way I'd built a company in secret because nobody at home cared enough to ask what I was doing. The graduation. The bus ticket. The interview. The confrontation. I told them about choosing to testify. About watching my father go to prison. About the complicated, messy process of learning to heal. Here's what I learned, I said. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who shows up. Who fights for you. Who sees you. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even if everyone tells you that you should forgive them just because you share DNA. I paused. Looked around the room. But I also learned that people can change. Not all of them. Maybe not even most of them. But some. My mother and I are still working on our relationship. We're in therapy. We're learning. It's hard. Really hard. But she's showing up. She's trying. And I'm letting her, because growth matters more than grudges. A girl in the front row raised her hand. She looked about 14. What if nobody shows up for you? The question hit me hard. Because I remembered being that girl. Being 14 and alone and wondering if anyone would ever care. Then you show up for yourself, I said. You become the person you needed when you were younger. You build a life that feels safe and good and true. And you find your people. They're out there. I promise. After the speech, kids lined up to talk to me. Tell me their stories. Ask for advice. One girl, maybe 16, showed me a coding program she'd built on her school-issued laptop. It's not very good, she said. But I'm learning. It's beautiful, I told her. Keep going. Keep building. You're on the right path. She smiled. Did you ever think you'd make it out? When you were my age and things were bad? No, I admitted. I thought I'd be stuck forever. I thought maybe I deserved it. But I was wrong. And so are you if you think that about yourself. What if I can't escape? You will. Maybe not today. Maybe not this year. But you will. And when you do, remember the girl you are right now. Remember what she needed. Then become that person for someone else. She hugged me and walked away, and I stood there in that community center thinking about circles and cycles, and how the best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. It's becoming so successful and happy and whole that their opinions stop mattering. That night, I had dinner with Dorian. We sat at our favorite restaurant, the one we used to dream about affording back when we were eating vending machine dinners and building prototypes at 3 a.m. You did good today, he said. Those kids needed to hear your story. I needed to tell it. How are things with your mom? Better. Not perfect. But better. We're learning how to be honest with each other. It's weird. Good weird. Sometimes. He smiled. And the company? How's it doing in the aftermath of everything? Better than ever, actually. Turns out people respect someone who stands up for what's right. We've gotten 3 major contracts since the trial ended. Investors are calling. The board is happy. So everything worked out. I wouldn't say that. My father's in prison. My sister won't speak to me. My family imploded on national television. But I'm free. I'm happy. I'm building something that matters. So yeah, in a weird way, everything worked out exactly how it was supposed to. We finished dinner and walked outside. The city was beautiful at night. All those lights stretching out forever. All those people living their lives, fighting their battles, finding their way. My phone buzzed. A text from Lorraine. Therapy was good today. Thank you for not giving up on me. Love you. I stared at those last 2 words. She'd said them before, of course. Thousands of times growing up. But they'd never meant anything. Just sounds. Obligation. Something you said because that's what mothers were supposed to say. But these felt different. Earned. Real. I texted back, love you too. And I meant it. Not the way I would have if she'd been the mother I needed. But the way you love someone who's trying. Who's learning. Who's choosing every day to be better than they were. 6 months later, I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Callie Mercer Scholarship Program. It was designed for kids from broken homes who wanted to study technology. Full ride. No strings attached. Just a chance. Richard was there with his daughters. They'd become ambassadors for the program, sharing their story about the importance of justice and truth. Emma, the youngest, had told me the week before that she wanted to be a lawyer when she grew up. So I can help people like my dad, she'd said. Lorraine was there too. Sober. Steady. Present. She'd gotten a part-time job at a bookstore. Started volunteering at a women's shelter. Was building a life that was hers, not just a reaction to someone else's demands. We weren't perfect. Still had hard conversations. Still had moments where old wounds reopened. But we were trying. And trying mattered. As I cut the ribbon and people clapped, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who sat in library corners teaching herself to code because home wasn't safe. The one who carried a bus ticket and wondered if anyone would ever see her as valuable. I wished I could go back and tell her she'd make it, that the pain wouldn't last forever, that one day she'd stand in front of people and tell her story and kids would look at her like she was proof that escape was possible. But I couldn't go back. None of us could. All we could do was move forward, build something better, be the people we needed when we were younger, break the cycles, tell the truth, show up. After the ceremony, a reporter asked me what message I wanted to send to people watching. I thought about it carefully. About Trent in prison. About Brielle still angry and unchanged. About Lorraine working hard to heal. About Richard and his daughters. About 200 kids at a community center. About everyone fighting battles nobody else could see. Justice isn't always about revenge, I said. Sometimes it's just about refusing to carry other people's cruelty into your future. And that day I walked away from graduation with a bus ticket in my hand. That was the day I bought my own freedom. Best investment I ever made. The reporter smiled. And your father? Do you have any message for him? I looked directly at the camera. I hope prison teaches you what home never did, that actions have consequences. That you can't destroy people without it eventually destroying you. And that the daughter you threw away built an empire you'll never touch. I walked away before they could ask anything else. Got in my car. Drove to my office. Sat at my desk on the 37th floor and looked out at the city I'd conquered not with cruelty, but with code and determination and the stubborn refusal to become what my father had been. My phone buzzed. An email from the scholarship program's first recipient. A 15-year-old girl named Sophia who'd been living in her car with her mother. She'd gotten the scholarship. Was starting college early. Her email was 3 paragraphs of gratitude and hope. At the end, she'd written, "Thank you for showing me that where we come from doesn't determine where we're going. Thank you for being proof that we can survive our families and still become who we're meant to be." I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Lorraine with a simple message. This is why it mattered. All of it. She replied immediately, "I'm proud of who you became despite us. And I'm grateful you're letting me be part of who you're becoming." I closed my laptop. Looked out the window. 37 floors between me and the ground. But I wasn't falling anymore. I was flying. And I'd done it all by myself. That bus ticket my father gave me? I'd framed it. Hung it on my office wall with a plaque underneath that read, "The most expensive gift I ever received." Cost, everything I had to lose. Value, the freedom to become everything I am. People asked about it sometimes. I'd smile and tell them it was a reminder. They'd assume I meant a reminder of how far I'd come. And I'd let them think that. But really, it was a reminder that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will hand you a ticket out of their life and think they're punishing you. They don't realize they're setting you free. So I kept that ticket. That symbol of rejection. That proof that I'd been deemed disposable by the people who were supposed to treasure me. I kept it because it stopped being a symbol of their cruelty and became a symbol of my liberation. And every morning when I walked into my office and saw it hanging there, I remembered, the best revenge isn't becoming like them. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. If you've lived through family betrayal, drop a comment with justice if this story hit home. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because the next story proves that what goes around doesn't just come around. It comes back with interest. Don't miss it.